Je vais vous prendre un cumulatif des deux visites.
Balade, c'est pas du tout ce soir. À quel prénom c'est ça?
Hello, I haven't done a video for some time about this house, and it's really because not much has happened. Lots of work has gone on, but not much seems to have changed, so I thought I'd wait until it looked a bit different. This, you will recall, is the main floor that I will live on. It will be a living, dining and kitchen, and what we have done is insulated all the walls with hemp lime, and this is the first coat of hemp lime all the way round, which was splattered on the walls some time ago, and it's now thoroughly carbonated, so it's dried and carbonated, which means it's absorbed CO2 from the air, and as you can see it's gone a lot whiter. It was horribly grey and grim and drab was this floor for a long time. There's a big argument about whether you should insulate the walls of old buildings, because the problem is you can cause condensation within the structure by cooling down the whole wall, because insulation on the inside blocks the wall from getting the heat of the room, obviously because you're trying to conserve energy. The reason I have used this insulation without a vapour barrier, as I discussed in an earlier video, is that this will breathe. It will breathe to the inside. So if the wall gets damp inside, the moisture can move inwards and dry out again, because the heat in the room will be drying out the insulation, and that will be sucking moisture from the wall. Upstairs we have been insulating the eaves, and that has been a bit of a task because of the whole aspect of French artisans. The way the building industry works in France is that you don't really have general builders. You see, you have a series of artisans, of specialist craftsmen, and they all take responsibility for their own work and ensure it. If anything goes wrong with the work over 10 years, you can get it put right by contacting the insurance company. The problem with that is that it makes every subcontractor, as we'd say in Britain, personally responsible for their work. So there was a series of crises about what I was proposing to do for insulating my roof, because in Brittany the roof structures are very lightly structured, and Axel, who was doing the roof, was worried that I was adding weight. But we had a bit of a disagreement about that, and so we've ended up with a different system. Here's the top floor, and as you can see we have boarded it out with oriented strand board. So see all this wood here in the garden? This was for Roger's plan. These bits of timber here were going to be in the ceiling, fastened between the rafters and the oriented strand board, and that was going to, Roger thought that was going to be all strong, but no, we don't have that, so now I have a garden full of timber. So how does the roof work instead? Well, this is how. It has a layer of slates which are resting on wooden boards. So the slates are up here, and there's a series of wooden boards with gaps in between, and then there is a gap for ventilation which is 50 millimeters, And then there is 100 millimeters of insulation between the rafters. And then below that is another 145 millimeters of insulation. The second layer is between various little metal struts that support these metal rails. So this is Axel putting the ceiling, the OSB ceiling, on those metal rails, mounted on all those little metal suspension brackets. You might remember last time I went on about how I didn't really like vapor barriers, which is why I've gone for this hemp lime solution to the walls. And had I known in advance I was going to think, let's have a vapor barrier, I probably would have detailed this a little bit different, because I was worried about all the joints between all these boards. There's a huge number of joints in this OSB structure, but what I was worried about more than vapor was actually air movement. You really want to get a roof like this relatively well sealed. And we've used this very expensive vapor barrier here, which is intelligent. It's like a Gore-Tex jacket in reverse, so it doesn't allow vapor to move through it in this direction, but water can go through the other way. If the structure gets damp for any reason, it will actually breathe. So we spent a lot of money on that, and then we spent even more money putting it in place and then putting the OSB on top. So this roof is a bit of an experiment, and I'm not certain I would do it completely like this were I to do it again, but I rather like the feel of it. It's much less clinical than it would be if this was simply painted plasterboard. The bottoms of the walls will be plastered up to the wall plate level, up to here, and running all the way along on both sides there will be a piece of ducting formed in timber with all the sockets on, because what I'm trying to do is to avoid burying electricity in the construction. You can see in the gap the vapor barrier visible, because obviously this will be covered up by the boxing that will go this way and this way, and I have spent some time sealing the edges of the vapor barrier, because if you're going to do a vapor barrier you ought to, I think, make a little bit of a pretense of making it vapor proof, even if I don't really completely believe in them. Because this is the problem with vapor barriers, it's every single junction has to be vapor proof if you really believe it's going to work. Now I don't need to really believe it's going to work, because I have ventilated construction on the other side of here, so if any moisture does get into the insulation it can breathe out to the outside, and it can also actually breathe out to the inside, because this vapor barrier is breathable to the inside. It's an intelligent vapor barrier, as we've said. So that's all quite nice. But forming all this coffering is quite a task, and we've got something similar going on the floor below. So this is how the sockets would work into, you see a piece of OSB in the face of the boxing like that. That's the plan. So the plan here, all the way around this room, there will be a duct at low level, like a plinth. And this is to avoid the conflict of electricity and the plaster, because normally, of course, you'd bury the electricity in the plaster. It would be put on first, and then the first layer of plaster would be put on, and then all the sockets would poke through. So every single socket would mean a hole in the insulation, because of course in this house this is actually the insulation. So I'm trying to avoid that. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I want the ability to alter the electrics in the future if I want to, so I want something accessible. So that's the plan under here. This is what it'll look like. Sheet of OSB at low level below this plinth. The finish of the plaster will be a centimetre or so further out than this, so it'll come down, it'll hit this piece of wood visually, and then below it you will have the OSB, and plug sockets will be put into that, and a hole drilled, so they'll be on the surface of that all the way along and all the way around this room. I've started having to do some demolition, taking out an existing fireplace so that I can form a kitchen. As to one, and here's a fish port. Of course, we use fish trays for the rubble. I've been getting some mysterious stains on the first floor, and I realised that this was water dripping from the brand new oak lintels above. Ooh. The solution to my leaking problem was to make sure that the sills above were completely waterproof. So I've created a neat extra slope on the sill where it was cracked, which hopefully is going to solve the problem of the leaking into the floor below. I did the same on the sill of one of the new windows I've opened up to the rear. Yeah, well, making a hole, very noisy, and obviously you have to make sure you don't fall out. You see old pictures of people building the Empire State Building and things in Manhattan like that, and they're standing on scaffolding hundreds of feet above the ground, and they just wander along these girders and have their lunch. But it's a really bad idea. You can very easily step out of an open window like that, so as quickly as possible you need to put up some sort of protection. I'm not an expert at rendering at all. I did get an Artisan to quote for this, but, well, he came and looked at it, but I'm still waiting for the quote. So, I'm doing the rendering. If you ever wondered why plasterers earn so much money, just try doing it. It's not only skill, but it's actually hard work.
Be hard working so you can be deserving of the rest that you are given. You gotta slow down and look around you, son. Give a lot and live a little. Work with what you got. Where you're going, you can rest your head. Where you're going, brightness looks big. Where you're going, truth cannot be hidden. You gotta get going. Easy now. You gotta get going. Easy now. Get along, give a hand, sleep heavy, be the man. Just there, where you are, do something, be the star. You gotta get